is Guillermo. I'm the co-founder and president of the Paso Leadership Network. And tonight we are hosting part of EPLN's leadership series, where we interview leaders from our community who are making strides in their respective industries. Tonight we are hosting a panel of business professionals. We have Paulina Bustos, Guillermo Santos, and Ricardo Flores. So let's just go ahead and get started with some basic questions to get to know each other. I would like to know, where did you go to college and what did you study in college? Let's start off with Paulina, then we'll move on to Guillermo and lastly, Ricardo.
Yeah, thanks, Miguel, for having me tonight and really be able to share my story with the network and anybody that might be interested. So I went to the University of Texas in Austin. That was a while back. I went to the business school and studied marketing as my major and finance as my minor. And what was the other part of the question?
You pretty much answered.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So since college, and perhaps we're going to get into it later. I've had a roles in banking, and that's what I'm currently doing right now. I'm in banking. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for having you here. All right, go ahead, Guillermo.
Yeah, hi guys, thanks for having me. My name is Guillermo Santos, and I went to Claremont McKenna College. It's a liberal arts school in Southern California, and I studied philosophy, politics, and economics with a dual major in economics.
Hey guys, how are you? I'm Ricardo Flores. Along with Guillermo and Miguel, we co-founded EPLN, so I'm happy to be back now as a panel speaker, not an operating member anymore. But I went to Georgetown University undergrad with my degree in political economy and a minor in global business. And yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome, thank you. And yes, it's great to have all of you here and have a conversation about business. I know that we are calling in from different parts of the country. Personally, I'm calling in from Miami, and y'all can share where you're calling from in just a moment. Now we're going to get to know each other a lot more. So the next question I want to study is, why did you choose to study business? If you chose to study business, and if you didn't study business, how did you get into business? We'll go with Paulina first.
Yeah, so I think for me, it was early on. I think since high school, really. I went to Americas High School in El Paso. I mean, I think we're all from El Paso. And I took a banking class in Americas. And little did I know that actually my career was going to land in banking. So kind of like a small world. But ever since then, I knew that there was some sort of interest in business. And quite frankly, my parents said, it's going to make you land a job. So it was kind of a safe bet to get me a job after college was kind of the goal. And I'm very grateful that I did. It was a very good choice for me, for my personality and kind of where I wanted to land. But I think since high school, I started sort of determining that business was where I was going to land. I wasn't really in the engineering track. I wasn't sort of, a little bit, the STEM. So it was early on that I decided business was where I was going to be. And I'm glad I did.
Should Memo go next?
Yeah, go ahead, Guillermo.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I didn't choose to study business. I'm also from El Paso. I attended El Dorado High School. And when I made the decision of, trying to select one of the few magnet programs offered at SISD, I was really attracted to the international baccalaureate program because it was pretty general. It was an exposure to different fields. So that kind of outlook influenced my decision to go to Claremont. Claremont was a liberal arts school, so I was going to, enroll in traditional undergraduate business courses. But, Claremont also was a strong feeder into roles that were in finance and consulting as well as politics. And so it kind of, made the decision easier for me because instead of focusing on studying business, I could take the liberty of exploring some other cool, interesting topics. And at the end of the day, I think it's very practical to what I do, because behind every, in my role, behind every investment or every deal, there's kind of a thesis. I learned, how to write a thesis really well, how to defend a thesis with data and relevant support points. And that's kind of what I do. So that's kind of what was going on in my, undergraduate career.
Yeah, so I'll follow up there as well. I went to America's High School, so Paulina is actually my sister, and I knew that she was in business because she's actually, not to expose her, but she's 10 years older than me, and even though she looks like my little sister, but I knew that business was out there, and I saw her do it, and she was one of my big role models. But I was mainly gravitated towards economics and politics. So I went to Georgetown mainly for that reason, to study politics, given that it was in Washington, D.C. And after doing a couple of internships on Capitol Hill for Veronica Escobar, and also helping out with Beto O'Rourke's campaign, I realized that politics just wasn't for me. I was not fulfilled personally, even though it's a very fulfilling career. And it was funny, I ended up walking up to an event that had free food my freshman year. And I had a suit on. And when I walked in, it was a JP Morgan banking event. And I just pretended that I was part of the event. And then I started to talk to some investment bankers, and the rest was history. I started to really gravitate towards business and the opportunities there. So an interesting story, but ultimately very, very happy to end up in business.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing, everyone. I think it's really interesting to see how we all could have different trajectories, but you all ended up in business, although you may or may not have studied business in college. So having said that, whether you did study business or not, I would like to know how you learned about business outside of the classroom. So could you share a little about internships that you did in college to learn more about business and get into the industry that you wanted to explore?
Yeah, sure. So at UT, I landed an internship my freshman year at UT at Target in the retail space. So that was one of my goals early on in college, just to get an internship, because that was sort of very important from a resume standpoint in college back then, and I think it still is, to get sort of that outside the classroom experience. And yeah, so I was at Target. I was in retail, so I learned operations in retail at Target. Everything from, the logistics aspects of the store to HR to everything that had to deal with managing a Target store in the retail space. So that was very interesting. And I did that actually for a couple of years. And while I was at UT, I was a Target ambassador. So while I was, once the summer was over and I was back into the schoolwork during the semester, I was a Target ambassador, and I was recruiting students to learn more about Target. And that was really cool. I think certainly the experience outside the classroom and taking your business courses, like your regular accounting and finance and the marketings and your management courses that you do in the business field that you take if you do major in business, it's important to have that experience. So funny enough, after college, I landed my job in banking, and it was in the retail aspect of banking, so managing banking centers. So I was gravitating towards that retail space, having that consumer interaction, and which was taught me a lot, quite frankly. I wasn't really dealing a lot with the B2B side of business. It was more the business to consumer, and that can be very humbling. So I think I learned a lot from being in that consumer and retail space. And yeah, so I think like you mentioned, Miguel, you acquire some of that business acumen by being out in the field and looking for the internships and the opportunities outside of the classroom, so that they can build you after college and into your career to land you into those roles that are in a business related field.
Thank you. Go ahead, Guillermo.
Oh, great. Sorry. I mean, didn't realize that we were following the same structure, but thanks, Paulina.
Yeah, we are.
I found that super interesting. I think similarly to me, a little bit different, but I think internships are a great way to complement your undergraduate experience if you're interested in business. Because even if you go, study some courses, there's nothing better than being there, learn from a big corporation. So in my case, I was fortunate enough to work for one of the big four accounting firms early on as a freshman in the accounting segment of the business. So, got an introduction to accounting, which is super important to understand financial statements and how companies, it's the language of business, so to speak. So super exciting, was exposed to kind of the industry that I still work to this day with, which is primarily industrial based companies. So yeah, that experience was everything to me. I was working in LA, big city, very, very different from El Paso, lots of crazy people, but it's very exciting and it was really motivating. So from there, wanted to try luck in Wall Street, kind of feeling more comfortable with having developed a business acumen. And so that took me to a sales and trading role with Barclays Investment Bank. Unfortunately, it was the COVID year, so didn't get a chance to experience, working for a firm in New York City, but got to learn about the markets, what it's like to keep up with both credit and equity markets on a day-to-day basis, which was also a really good learning experience. And then lastly, kind of transitioned into my current role right now through an internship in investment banking at Wells Fargo. So that's kind of, what I did in undergrad. And I would really just highlight that most of these experiences came through career services centers that are in undergraduate institutions. So I would really highly recommend that, to be really alert about the opportunities that they flag by and get familiarized with everyone that works there. So.
Thanks, Memo. No, that's awesome. I kind of share a similar story to that of Memo, in the sense that when I went into Georgetown, going back to the point that I studied politics and then met some bankers in Wall Street, which is what JP Morgan, another big bank, kind of like Barclays, does. I think, first of all, the question is, what is business? And that's something that I didn't even know what it was when I was in college. I didn't even know what it stood for. I know what finance and accounting, the studies of it, but I didn't know how to translate into like actionable things. So when I was at Georgetown and I did my first internship, I really got to understand how Wall Street worked. And even the word Wall Street is so big. People know what it is, but not really what it does. So operating at a large bank, and what banks do is they pretty much advise other companies. And Paulina touched upon it, where she said, she works on business, bank to consumer. So this is you and I go to Chase and we open up a credit account. What Memo and I did is we help out large companies, let's say Amazon or McDonald's, who are they maybe want to get a credit card, or maybe they want to get a loan. That's what Wall Street does, is it helps big companies do that in many other ways. And to me, it was really interesting that even though I didn't choose business, my background in political economy and government really was a good complementary foundation to banking, because when you're looking at stocks, when you're trading stocks, and when you're looking at Wall Street overall, it's also based on what's going on in the geopolitical space. So if Trump decides to tweet, I'm going to war with North Korea, which, knock on wood, that will never happen, that affects the markets. And I thought that was really interesting to see those effects and see how politics, how economics, and also finance all come together to affect the business side.
Great, thank you, everybody. And again, I just think it's fascinating how people's trajectory can be quite different from case to case. I mean, we heard how Paulina started in marketing, but then transitioned into banking. Guillermo started off in accounting, transitioned to banking. And Ricardo started off in banking, transitioned into consulting. So I would love to learn a little more about what you ended up doing. So could you please just expand a little more as to where you work at now and what is your role? And if you could share something interesting about your job, that would be great as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, like I said, starting in banking, and I'm glad that Ricardo touched on, because it seems like we're all in banking, but different aspects of the banking business. And I think business is just so broad. There's so many applications and jobs and spaces that people can land into when we're talking about business. It happens that the panelists here are in banking and in different aspects of it, but well, Ricardo not anymore, but still touches on it. So my role currently is I work for a bank. I work for Comerica Bank. It's a regional bank based out of Dallas, Texas, and that's where I'm at now. That's where I live. My family and I, my husband and my 2 girls, we live here now. And at Comerica, what my role is now, we actually recently transitioned the name of our department. We are called Global Trade and Supply Chain. So my role in this department, in this group, is we help companies, so our business clients, small, medium, and large clients that are engaged in global trade, whether they're importing or exporting. We help facilitate transactions through banking to mitigate some of the risks that come with trading. And then also we have, and that's what that kind of, you see that global trade and supply chain, that's what the role is called. And I'm a global trade and supply chain banker. The supply chain piece, and people may be interested in the supply chain, is just another component of the solutions that we offer the business clients to maximize their working capital through financing in their supply chain and between, the relationships between buyers and suppliers. So that's just kind of the easiest, I think, way to explain it, but it's a pretty interesting role. I really do like it. Funny story is, when I was at UT, I really wanted to major in international business. And I mentioned earlier, I ended up doing marketing and finance, and really I did marketing and finance because that's where the companies back then, and I think still there's a little bit of stigma that you're going to get hired if you're an accounting or finance major, but like the panelists here, you can be in, studying economics and politics, and you can be in a liberal arts school, and you can make your way into business with some of the other experience. But all to say that I really liked traveling abroad, and I studied abroad in college, and I wanted to learn about culture, and that's why I wanted to major in international business. But anyway, so got sidetracked and said, well, I'm going to do marketing and finance. But really now in my role, I do deal with companies that are engaging in global trade in all parts of the world. So it's pretty interesting. And I do work with banks, like international banks. So I'm pretty happy where I landed, sort of 12 years later after college, in this role where I am sort of, I have to be aware of the international landscape and have to keep up with, just some cultural differences that come in trading with countries abroad and how we help our customers. So.
Wow, that's awesome, Paulina. So, definitely hard to follow. And I will say for context, definitely, some very solid advice from these 2 people, as I'm kind of the more junior one. So won't have cool things to say or as much experience to drop, but, happy to talk about what I do now. I currently work as an investment banking role within Wells Fargo. So when people think of Wells Fargo, I really, I grew up, my parents walked me to the teller, and so that's what I thought a bank did. So Wells Fargo has a very big commercial presence. They do a lot of mortgages, or in other words, like they lend money to people to get their houses. My first bank account was with Wells Fargo, funny enough. So never thought that it would, be the company that I work for full time. So I work not in the commercial side of Wells Fargo, but the investment banking side of things. So very simplified, investment banking would just be, helping businesses either sell to another business or buy another business, or come up with the best way to raise money to fund their operations. So I support senior staffers in presenting the best solutions for clients in those two things that I previously mentioned. And I do so within the industrial space. So specifically, I cover building products and home building companies. We can think windows, doors, nothing sexy, but it's very interesting because it's stuff that you see on a day-to-day. And I get to see, clients on random things that come across, from faucets to toilets to things like that. So, and then one thing that I really like about my role is that I'm continuously learning. I think there's something new that is to be every day. A job is a job, so sometimes it will get repetitive, and there'll be some things you quite master over the years. But I would also advise that something that really guided my decision about what career I wanted to go to was something where I felt I was constantly challenged and motivated, and didn't really have a capping stone in terms of what you can learn. And I find that to be the case where I'm currently in. So, passing it on to Ricardo.
No, thank you, Memo. It's a great story, and I think that regardless of the experience, a lot of people just FYI, investment banking is one of the toughest jobs to get in business. So you can get into investment banking without an MBA, and if you can get into investment banking incredibly quick, then that just comes to prove the caliber of a scholar and of a networker you are, which is something that I would like to touch upon later. But ultimately, with myself, started doing sales and trading, which is how Memo also started with. So this is selling stocks that the company's already issued. So companies issue stocks to fund their operations. And we did that. That was my internship. Then I went on to also do investment banking with Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs did exactly what Memo did. Then a mentor of mine, who's also an ex-Goldman banker, and other two ex-Goldman bankers, decided to start a company, a tech company called wealth.com. So what we did at Wealth is you digitize estate planning. So let's say you were to pass away tomorrow, God forbid, and you want to leave something to your family, you have to go and talk to a lawyer to create a document to do that. And that costs a lot of money for people like you and I who are not millionaires. I don't know. There might be some millionaires in the room that I might not be aware of, but ultimately what ends up happening is it's really expensive, and we decided to democratize the whole process and make it technology driven so that I can go online and create that document for a fraction of the price of what a lawyer would charge me. So I was in investment banking. I was not feeling too fulfilled with the job. No offense, Memo. But it's an ongoing joke here. But ultimately ended up leaving and starting this tech company. And I was there for a little under a year. And there I was a product owner. So what we did there was very tech driven. So more on the tech side, and help manage global engineers, all that good stuff. Then I ended up leaving that, and now I'm a management consultant. So in the lifespan of a little over 2 years, I've had 3 different jobs. So very unconventional, but what it has given me the opportunity is to really tap into different industries. And now what I do as a management consultant is I advise banks. So it's type of the same banks that Paulina and Memo work for. And I help them integrate AI. So think of ChatGPT, think of all these other solutions. And I mainly talk to the management side. So when it comes to management consulting, what it means is you go in and you help CEOs and CFOs fix problems. And right now, the big problem is how do banks continue to stay on top of their operations and improve their operations with AI and technology. So I go in there and I help advise how we do that and how that affects, how many workers do we need to replace some workers with technology, which is a sad thing to do and think of, but that is kind of ultimately where some of these trends are going. So that's a little bit what I did. Sorry, I went on a ramble, but wanted to touch upon all the different sides of business that I've had in my short career.
Great. Thank you all for sharing your response to this question. And as I'm listening to you, I can't help but think just how challenging and intricate business can be. So I know that we have people listening to this conversation who are interested in getting into business, but they don't even know how to begin learning about the concepts that you all have mentioned throughout the conversation. So beyond what you have already shared, I would just like to know if you have any more advice to students who want to work in business. How can you best prepare yourself in high school and college to succeed in business?
Yeah, I think one of the really good ways, I think we may all say, yeah, you need to, be in extracurricular activities, be a leader, in high school, join a club. There's tons of things that you can do in high school outside of the regular schoolwork in your classes that you can be involved in, whether it's sports or an association, an organization, NHS, all those typical ones. But I think one thing that I wish I had done more, and I still want to, I'm still trying to practice this, is look out for a potential mentor and look out for people that you see that you are interested in learning what they do, and don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, this is, I'm Paulina, I'm a freshman in college, or I'm a sophomore, this is what I do. And I'm just interested in learning about what you do. Do you have some time? And you'd be surprised, because I think people do want to share. People like talking about themselves, and people do want to share what they do, especially if it's going to help out someone that is trying to figure out what their future is going to look like. I think, looking out for some of those role models that you're interested in, saying, hey, that sounds like a really cool thing that they do in business. Reaching out to them and asking if you can get a little bit of their time to learn about what they do. And, I'm going to put out, offer myself as a resource for anybody in the audience that may be interested in learning more. I'm totally for being available and helping anybody that may just want to say, hey, Paulina, what you said during the call seems pretty interesting. I want to learn more. I'm available. And Miguel, if we can share at a later time contact information so that people that are interested can reach out, because that's the advice I'm giving. So I'm obviously want to make myself available for people that are interested. And outside of that, do all the things, join clubs, sign up for leadership roles in high school and in college. Look out and, go attend the career sites and do the job fairs and network. And I think that's a very, very another good piece is network, put yourself out there and just meet people. And you'd be surprised how far you can go. And I think, some of the panelists, the job that I'm in now, I landed because when I said I started in banking and I was in the retail side and I wasn't getting too fulfilled, and it was a time to pivot my career. And I was in Dallas and I was out and about just networking and meeting people. And I ended up landing the job that I'm at and meeting my current leader. So that's also super important. That's also another thing that I would recommend.
Yeah, sorry, Paulina. I thought those were all great tips, and definitely, on a similar point, I think, people who are interested in business, as easy as it sounds, learning how to write a proper email, an elevator pitch, whatever you personally call it, is super important, because to Paulina's point, you want to make sure you express a natural, inclination to learn about someone else's career. And you'll be surprised that oftentimes that is truly where you learn more about not only business, but what you want to do with business. And that's kind of the second point I had in mind. Be open-minded about, what area of business you want to go into. We've touched upon consulting as one, surface, retail as another, and operations driven. We talked about financial services, but there's tons of roles out there. That are also available by some of your favorite companies. So I think that's also another thing I would point out. More high level, I think, learning more math, especially at a younger age, will never hurt you. It's really interesting because, as soon as you graduate, the math in business never gets harder than addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So that extra calculus class that you do take, or that extra algebra class, will benefit you, because by the time you graduate and get a job, it'll be a breeze. And I think that's more and more jobs are becoming more demanding And so it would definitely be something I would consider. And then lastly, just kind of be curious about the world around you. There's kind of interesting things that might go unnoticed. Take a look at your daily habits and what you spend the most on, because behind the things you truly care about is a great company. Advertising a product that either has some good ethos to it, that makes you your parents spend money on it, that makes you spend money on it, whether it's video games, a certain kind of food, beverage business. There are all kinds of interesting things out there that that once you dig a little bit more, you'll be surprised to see that it's just a well thought out idea that turned into a product, and it is actually being executed as a business. So yeah, I'll pause there and pass it on to Ricardo.
Man, I mean, it's tough being the last one here because I think you guys covered pretty much everything, and I'm actually learning more from you guys. So I'll connect with you guys after this and ask for more tips. But I think I'll give some more tangible examples of how you can do this. I think LinkedIn, if you're interested in business and you do not have a LinkedIn, you should look into it. So what is LinkedIn? It's like a Facebook or an Instagram for business people. And I think it's the best way and it's the easiest way for you to start connecting with people. And as a student, you have the benefit of not knowing much. So people who are business, who are already doing and operating things, will be more than gladly to help you and educate you on what they're doing, because they don't expect you to know things. And that goes back to Paulina's point, is the best way you can find mentors. If you don't, obviously we're all here available to you guys, but if you are interested in a role in a company like Memo mentioned, look up that company on LinkedIn and see who works for that company and reach out to them. Hey, I'm a student, I'm very interested and I would love to learn more. But also be very thoughtful, and it goes back to also what Memo said, of writing the right email or writing the right message. Don't just say, oh, teach me more, but find ways of how you can create, if you want to create a meaningful relationship with your mentor, if you decide to reach out to a business person, is how can I add value to them as well? Because we're all very busy, and like Paulina, she has a family, she has 2 beautiful girls, and it's tough to give more time to people who just want to receive and receive. So if maybe you don't know the business, but you have an extra time to do research, and by research, you mean maybe you see that you're in marketing and you saw this new trend on how AI is helping marketing, and there's a tool, and you reach out to a marketer and say, hey, look, I would be very interested in learning more about what your job. Did you hear about this tool that helps marketers jobs easier by doing this? Simple things like that will make you stand out to that business person and say, wow, not only did this person reach out to me, interested about what I do, but they even offered me a resource that I might not even know about. So those little things will go the extra mile. And the last thing is network. Going back to the point of, I don't think school, and I don't think any growing up in El Paso or even in college, they do a great job of networking. There's not a class on like networking. And that's something that really, really puts you, I think separates a normal business person with the best business person. Someone who can really connect with people, someone who can really talk to people. So I would also advise you, if you're still in college, take a speech class. Take a debate class. And I'm a little biased because I'm a former speech and debater, but that helps you polish your diction, helps you polish the way that you speak. And as you can tell from this conversation, everyone here is incredibly good at speaking and at presenting their ideas. So that will go a long way in business, regardless of the math skills, which are very essential. But at the end of the day, business is connecting with people. And if you're able to do that through speech, if you're able to do that through networking, and supplement that with awesome math skills, you're going to take over the world.
That's really good. I was going to add something, Miguel, if you allow me, just because both of them just gave awesome advice and awesome tips that still apply, 12 years into my career. The only other piece that I would want to give to the audience is invest in yourself. Like that, we've said is, go out and, use the tools and like LinkedIn and reach out to people and network and take, that speech class or that debate class and sharpen your skills. And part of that also may mean that's investing in yourself, certainly, but it also may mean, after college, go and get your grad degree. I went for an MBA. I know Ricardo is interested in an MBA, or, you can, those accolades, they still matter. And people do want to see, like, that you've taken, and it's more about taking the time to invest in yourself that people respect when you do and get that grad degree. So if you're interested in continuing after college, you don't have to. I mean, some people do pretty well and there's no need for a degree, but I think it does go a long way. And I will share that grad degree, because I have my MBA, did make a difference, or has made a difference in the role that I landed, just because leadership at my bank values those graduate degrees. So that I just wanted to add that tad bit on graduate degrees as well.
Memo's going to a great MBA, so Memo also will attest to that. I'll show off for him because he's humble, but he's going to Wharton, so eventually, so that's very exciting.
Thank you guys. I think, education has always been transformative to me. It was kind of how I made my friendship with Miguel. It was kind of how I made my acquaintance with Ricardo. It's how I'm meeting Ricardo's sister. It's how, I got my job. So I think all of us can vouch for always having that internal desire to keep learning and ultimately look for good places that you can continue to do so. At its core, if you take a takeaway from anything, yes, like there's many careers where you can learn many different things. I think with business, you just have to be naturally inquisitive and wanting to continue to learn more and be driven about it. And that's kind of, all it really takes, and the rest are just pieces in the puzzle. But I'll pause there.
Well, I really do appreciate all of the wisdom that you have shared. I especially appreciate what you have said about the importance of educating yourself and seeking mentorship, because those are both values that El Paso Leadership Network has. Now, I just want to wrap up our conversation by exploring the topic of identity, because the people in this room right now, we all share in similar identities. We all are from El Paso, and we are all Latino as well. So I would just like to ask you, how has your identity as an El Pasoan, as a Latino, as a woman, first generation college student, etc., impacted your experience becoming a business professional?
Tremendously. I mean, I think that the short answer to that is that the identity has impacted who I am, and that is multifaceted, right? So that is first, being, recognizing where you come and never forgetting about that. I will say that I'm a proud El Pasoan, and really I grew up in Juarez. So the first 11 years up to middle school, I was in Juarez, and Spanish was my first language. There was a point, when you're in middle school and we moved to El Paso, that you just become lost in that identity. And it was tough, but all to say that you got to stay grounded, and you got to remember where you came from, because it'll continue to show you where you want to go. I think the other real good piece, obviously now there's seasons in your life. So for example, my season in my life is now I'm married, I have a family, I have little girls, I'm a mom. So that's part of my identity and who it's shaping, and who the woman that I am in my career now. So I'm speaking perhaps, years down the line from the audience, but, keeping that in mind. And really the last thing that I want to say is, with all this piece of identity is a part of becoming or staying true and authentic. People value in business leaders that are authentic, that can speak with authenticity and with honesty. And I think in business that comes through all the time, whether you're a leader or not in a leadership role, it doesn't matter. You want to stay authentic to yourself. And part of that authenticity is recognizing and staying true to who you are, where you came from, and how you grew up, and making it shown, and knowing your value in your role, and that part of being authentic. So that's just my 2 cents on identity.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely interesting perspective. I think everyone will be able to speak about a very unique and intimate relationship that we have with the U.S.-Mexico border. I think, Paulina, your word was like spot on, multifaceted. It's really advantageous to live in a community where you entertain 2 languages. And as a result of all the different, cultural associations that come with it. I think for me, how being from El Paso really helped me was, and I think I speak for all of the panelists, because we went to these schools where it's very different from home, and you get to see people of all shapes and sizes, and it's like, wow, like, El Paso is a bubble, and it's very, similar, and it's very comfortable. And once you're exposed out there, I truly think that, because I was multifaceted, because I was easygoing, and I could speak 2 languages, it kind of made me embrace people a little bit more easily, and really establish my presence as someone authentic and someone that they hadn't seen before. This is what a kid from El Paso looks like, type of idea. And more importantly, in business, yeah, you have to be your own advocate. I think all of us learn how to speak for ourselves. And I think it translates really well for the values that we had, right? Like el que no habla, Dios no lo ayuda. So literally, it's like I was there asking for more resources while in college. I was there asking for more opportunities to learn at my job. And I truly think that's kind of an experience, that comes from border. So that's my snippet.
Yeah, I think it's something interesting. First of all, there's a lot of sides of business, and we've all at least touched the finance side. And predominantly speaking, you look at historically, at least in this country, those who are in finance are predominantly white people. And it's a very elitist side of business, especially the banking side. So being a woman, being a Latina woman, being a Latino man, there's already some preconceived ideas as to what they think about you when you go into the business side. And I'm not saying that's with everyone, but I know when you're looking at investment banking and you're looking at industries that have been dominated by these individuals, they already think that you're an outlier. And I think the one thing that you have to keep in mind is not only continue to do, if you ever find yourself in an environment where you might be the only Latino man in the room or in your team, first of all, remember that you're human and everyone there is human. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're Latino or not, or you're white or not. We're all human, and we all have the capabilities to achieve any job that any person can. And I think that the first thing I would do is become really good at what you do, become good at your job, and let your work speak for itself. Where the first thing people say about Paulina and Memo is, oh no, well, he's Latino. It's no, he's a great worker. He's a hard worker. He's really good at what he does. And it just happens that he's Latino. And that itself is going to be complementary. And once you can add personality to your work, which is where your culture and which is where your identity comes, you'll be a force to be reckoned with, because once the work is done and the fun comes, where you start to talk to people, you start to network, that identity of being a proud Latino, of knowing your roots, will take you way, way more levels than some people. And I think you can use it to your advantage, because one thing can be, you might be at a disadvantage when you're the only one, but then when you're in a group and it's a bunch of gyms playing golf, and here comes Paulina, the Latina, who loves to dance and can speak other languages and super outgoing, that'll stand out. And the same can be said about Memo and I. So use it to your advantage, but don't remember that hard work has no identity, and establish that first before you begin to tap into your superpower, which is your culture.
Great. And just to add on to Ricardo's last point of using your identity to your advantage, I would just share some piece of advice, because I did have a stint in business. I did a couple of internships in banking, and I used my identity to my advantage by joining networks of people who share in my identity. For example, I joined the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, I joined Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, and I was part of Management Leadership for Tomorrow, which are all organizations that champion diversity, and they care about people's identity very deeply. So I would not hesitate to search for organizations such as the ones I have mentioned. So with that, I would love to just conclude this conversation, which has been great. The wisdom that you have shared has been amazing, and I'm sure it will be useful for people who have access to this conversation. And again, thank you so much for your time. It was good to get to hear all of your perspectives, and we'll hear about them on YouTube and on El Paso Leadership Network's website. Thank you very much.